My dear students, continuing with bringing video lectures on important topics, today I bring before you the administration under Mughals. Now, administration as such is a very vast topic. So, for your convenience, I have divided this into two video lectures. One lecture will talk about the central, provincial, and the local administration, and the other lecture will talk about the financial or the revenue, military, and the judicial administration. So let's quickly dive into today's topic, the central, provincial, and local administration under the Mughals. Now, before we go on to do that, let's first understand what were the features of the Mughal administration. Now you have to remember that prior to the Mughals, the Delhi Sultans, they accepted Caliph or the head of the Muslims as their nominal head, right? In fact, they also would get some kind of a certificate like Khilat and issued coins in his name. Something like, if you go into a CBSE school or a Punjab school education board school, you'll see that the certificate of affiliation is there. So somewhat like that, the Delhi Sultans, they used to regard Caliph as their nominal head. But when it comes to Mughals were free from any kind of nominal authority of any foreign power, right? So this is first feature. Number two, Mughal rule was not theocratic. That means in here, it actually theocracy means when religion is supreme, of course. But here, I want to pinpoint this fact is that because king was accepted as the final judge in case there was any opinion, any difference of opinion regarding the Islamic law. Then, number three, the Mughal rulers adopted the policy of religious toleration, except for Aurangzeb, because when we talk about Akbar, he did abolish the pilgrimage tax and he did abolish the jizya. Then we talk about the Mughals, we talk about their Rajput policy. It was only Aurangzeb who actually reversed this policy of religious toleration. And when it comes to administration, Akbar truly introduced an excellent system of administration and he strengthened this nascent Mughal empire, right? Then the other feature of their administration was that these Mughal emperors had unlimited power. See, many of you who are doing political science or have done political science will understand that there are three organs of government. One, the legislature, one who makes the laws, executive, one who executes those laws, and judiciary to see that how the laws are being done, everything is right in the right format, right? So here, the Mughal emperors had entire power. They were the ones who would formulate the law. They were the ones who would execute the law. They were the supreme, they had the supreme judicial powers. But despite having so much, or the unlimited powers, they were not cruel or selfish. They believed that their most important duty is the welfare of the subjects. In fact, Akbar used to listen personally to the complaints of the people. Now, I would like to add here, now J.N. Sarkar, an important historian of this period, he says that Mughal administration was a Perso-Arabic system in the Indian setting because Mughal administration was an synthesis or amalgamation of Indian, Arabic, and the Persian systems. Right now, this is very important. I have made these three slides because basically, how are we going to study the administration? Now let me compare that administration with the today's administration. Now today, and then we'll just see how it was done in Mughal. Now today, first you have the center, then you have the state, okay? Then you have the district, then you have the small towns or and then you have the villages. Now, how was it done in Mughal administration? There was center. Now, in center, there were two important people. One, the king or the sultan, he was the head of the state. And number two were his ministers. Obviously, we'll do that in detail. Now, state was known as a suba. In my next slide, I'll talk about it. So, the head of the suba was a subedar, And to assist Subedar, there were various officers for which we will be talking in detail. So we've done the center. There is, oops. So we've done the center. There is the Sultan and his ministers. We've done the state. There is Subedar and his assistant officers. The other is the district. Now, district was called as the Pargana, and the head of the Pargana was the Faujdar, and they were these assistant officers to help him in the district. Now, when it comes to small towns, not like that, halake bache, in certain books you might find that was called as a shikwa, right? And the head of that shikwa or the small town was called as shikwadar. But I have just kind of broadly divided them. The last unit of the administration was village, and the most important authority to administer in village was the panchayat, right? Now let's go into detail of all this. So सबसे पहले we have the central administration. Now central administration का head जो है, that used to be Sultan. And I told you, Bache, Sultan had unlimited powers. He was the one who made all the major appointments. He made the laws. He was the commander in chief, the final dispenser of justice. Now, during the time of Akbar, the Sultan was also the final judge or the arbiter in case there was any difference of opinion regarding the Islamic laws. And the Hindu tradition of the divine right was not forgotten, because Akbar considered himself to be the shadow of God or the God's representative on earth. Hence, he also started the practice of Jharoka Darshan and Tuladan. Right, now let's come to the ministers. Now basically, before we go on to do the ministers, actually you will require one, the prime minister, someone to manage the finances, someone to manage the army, someone to manage the religion and the palace. So this is actually how the ministers work. So number one is the oops. Number one is the Wazir or Diwan, the Prime Minister. Then is the Mir Bakshi. Then is Sadr e Sadur, Khan e Saman, Qazi ul Kawazat, Muhtasib, Mir e Atish, Daroga e Dak Chauki. So we'll do these ministers in detail. So we are doing part one of this, that is the central administration, where there are two things. One, the Sultan. Number two are the ministers. And these ministers are what we are doing. Now, the first minister is the prime minister. Now, prime minister was next to emperor in the work of administration. Now, originally, the work of prime minister was given to Diwan. Diwan was also something like a finance minister or one who was concerned about the revenue department. But later on, Diwan was titled as Wazir or the prime minister. Number one, he was the head of the revenue department, so he would look after the income and expenditure of the state. Then, number two, he would look after the administration in the absence of the emperor. If there was a time of emergency, he also commanded the army. He was assisted by several officers and subordinates. Then comes the Mir Bakshi. Now, Mir Bakshi was the one who had the general control over the army. The recruitment of the army, branding of the horses, elephant, and to look after the supplies of the army, the training of the soldiers, their salaries. That was all the work of the Mir Bakshi, right? Number two, three is Sadur us Sadu, right? Now he advised emperor in all the religious matters. That means in terms of your religious education, charity, what kind of jagirs are to be given to these scholars, ulma, qazi. He also advised the king for the appointment of sadar or subedar in the provinces and supervise their work, right? Then is Khan e Saman or the Lord of High Steward. Now he was in charge of the emperor's household establishment. He looked after the personal necessities of the emperor and his family. His important duty was to manage the karkhanas, or I call in a very simpler word, the personal factories of the emperor, where, in these karkhanas, the artisans were given the advance money, and they made the all the requirements for the right? Then is Qazi ul Kawazat. He was the highest judicial officer of the state, and he appointed Qazis in the provinces and the district. Then is Muhtasib. This is very, very important. Now, he looked after the moral development of the subjects. He also checked the drinking of liquor, gambling, some kind of illicit relation between the men and the woman, right? Then is Mir Atish or artillery. He was in charge of the artillery, right? Then is Daroga a Dak Chonki, intelligence and the post. He was in charge of the intelligence department. Now he collected news from the news recorder, or there it was called as Wakia Navis, who was appointed in the province. It was his duty to inform emperor about every important affair within the empire. Thus, the Mughal emperors had well organized system of administration at the center. Let's quickly revise what we have done. Right, so we had done first the Sultan. He was all in all, he was Zille Ilahi, the shadow of God on the earth, God's representative on the earth. Right, then the ministers. The first minister that we will be talking is the Diwan or the Wazir, the Prime Minister. He was the head of the revenue department. He would administer in the absence of emperor. He would even command the army in times of emergency, but he was assisted by several officers and subordinates. Then the Mir Bakshi, he had the general control over the army, recruitment, branding, paymaster of the soldiers, right? Then is Sadar e Sadur. All the religious matters were taken care by him, right? So in terms of the religious education or the charity or some kind of jagirs which have to be given to these religious people, the scholars, ulmas, qazis, was his duty. Then he also was an important person who guided Sultan in appointing the Sadars in the provinces, right? Then is Khan e Saman. I always tell you, Vijay, that we actually live in very we have like a nuclear family concept, and even for a day some guests come, even two or three people come, there's this whole family taking care of that guest. So just imagine that these Mughal emperors had huge palaces and huge number of guests who would come every day. So all that was the responsibility of Khan-e Sanam. And even in terms of the personal necessities of the emperor, and then he would also manage the karkhanas of the emperor. Qazi ul Qazawat, the highest judicial officer of the state. Muhtasab, to look after the moral values of the subjects. Mir Atish, in charge of the artillery. Daroga Dak Chonki, there was the intelligence and the post department. So with this, we have completed one part of our video lecture. We have done the central administration. Now, please go back to your books and you can just read what I have taught you, and I hope the things are very much clear. Now, the only problem which could come is about wakil or the wazir or the diwan ala. So just understand this, bache. Initially, diwan as such, you know, the prime minister was called as the wakil, right? And the office of wakil seems to have come into prominence when Akbar was a minor and Behram Khan acted as his behalf. So that time wakil was there. So after that, his this office lost its prominence, and this office of wakil or your this completely faded away. And then we have diwan. Diwan was the in charge of the revenue department. No payment could be made or no tax imposed without the consent of the diwan, right? So I think this is clear. Now let's come to the Suba or the provinces. So जैसे आज की states है, you have Punjab, Haryana, Maharashtra. So in the same way, there were these states in Mughal provinces as well. Now, they were about 15 subas at the time of Akbar. So, by the time we reach Aurangzeb, the number of subas had increased to 20. Now, a question for you, please write me in the comments how many subas or provinces or states we have in the present India. So, I'm waiting for your comment. Right. Now, the provincial governors See, just like the province right now or a state right now, the head of that state is the chief minister. But during those time, the head of the Suba was known as the Subedar or a Sipa Salar. Now, number one, he was the emperor's representative in the Suba. Now, he performed, both the, you can say, both the civil and the administrative or the even the military functions in times of the in times in emergency times, right? So Subedar was the emperor's representative. He was the highest military officer in the province. He commanded the provincial officers. He was the head of the judicial department of the Suba. He helped the Diwan in collection of revenue and also adopted various measures for the public welfare. Now, the important officers who helped the Diwan was one, the Amil, he was the revenue collector, then Bichi, he was the chief treasurer, the Faujdar, Kotwal, and Vakya Navas, that is your intelligence post, right? So it was something which is just an exact replica of the central government. Like I'll just say this line again because this is what I want to explain it to you. Now, head of the province is a subedar, that is clear, right? Now that subedar had the entire powers, civil, military, and the the administrative powers of that province, right? But to help him, he helped the divan in the collection of revenue. Then there was Amil or the revenue collector. The you can say that the Bichi, he was the chief treasurer. Then there was a Faujdar or the Kotwal, and then there was the Vakya Navas. Now, Vakya Navas was the one who supplied direct reports to the right. Now, after this, we come to the Sarkar. Now, I told you Sarkar is nothing but a district of the modern day. So, we have the central, then we have the Subas, the head is the Subedar, then we have the Sarkar, or just like we have the districts right now. Now, head of the district in the contemporary India is the deputy commissioner. You must have seen that during the lockdown, it was the prerogative or the power of the DC to, kind of have the timings of the lockdown as he wanted to be, right? Because he is the in charge of the entire district. The same way, bache, when we talk about the Sarkar or the district, during the Mughal period, its head was the Faujdar. He was the chief executive and the military officer of the Sarkar. His main duty was to maintain peace and enforce law and regulation. After that was Amal Gazar, the revenue collection. So his duty was to survey the land, collect the revenue, and then the Bichi, he was something like, actually, बच्चे मैं ये भी कह सकती हूँ कि Bichi also had certain kind of powers which did the same like Amal Gazar. He had to make the necessary records regarding the different categories of land. So in some way they both were a check on each other's power. And last was your Khazandar. He was the treasurer of the district. So basically, once again, the Faujdar was the head of the district, followed by the Amal Gazar. His main work was to collect the revenue. Then the Bichi, he was to maintain all the necessary records regarding different categories of land with the help of the Kwango, and then was the Khazandar. Now, in the you can say that now in the I think I forgot one important point to tell you that in the Subas you also I think I forgot one person that was Bakshi. Because बच्चे आपको ये याद रखना the provincial administration was the exact replica of the central administration. So just like in the center you have the Mir Bakshi, the same way you also had in the Suba, right? And he was known as the Bakshi. And following the central patron, his main duty was to supervise the military affairs, to inspect the army, right? Sarkar we have done, and then comes the Pargana. Now, Pargana was the lowest unit of the fiscal and the civil administration. Its head was known as the Shikwedar. Amil was the finance minister of the Pargana, right? And then we also have another important officer, Kwango. His main duty was to prepare the papers regarding the agriculture and the collection of revenue. Now, this is, I think, I'm sorry, I just kind of miswrote it. It's called as the Port Dar. Now, he was the chief treasury officer of the Pargana, right? So, very quickly, let's just move on. Like from the provinces, first we have the provinces or the states. They are headed by the Subedar, and to assist the Subedar, we have the Diwan, we have the Bakshi, we have the Amil or the revenue collector, Bichi, the treasurer, Faujdar, Kotwal, Vakya Navas. Then after these subes or the provinces, we have the Sarkar. The head of the Sarkar was a Faujdar. To assist him, there was Amal Gazar, the revenue collector, Bitchi to maintain all the necessary records with the help of Kwango, and Khazandar was something like a treasurer of the district, right? So Sarkar is a district, just like the DC is the head, here the Faujdar was the head. Then comes the Pargana. See, Pargana you can also call as a small town. Like Pargana, if I talk in terms of today's thing, then we can say in terms of the work of the municipal corporation or commissioner. So that was the work which was taken by the Shikwadar. He was the military officer or the head of the Pargana. There was the Amil, he was the finance officer of the Pargana. Then there was Kwango. His main duty was to collect the papers regarding the agriculture and the collection of revenue. And then comes the Potdar. He was the treasurer of the Pargana. And in the end, it was village administration. Now, of course, I have also posted my video on the literature, and there I had talked about the important literary works during the during the Mughal period. There I had referred Aine Akbari. So Aine Akbari gives in detail the full administrative the levels during the Mughals, and specifically talks about the village administration. Now, village administration was looked after the panchayat. They looked after the sanitation, irrigation, education, public work, and even just dispensed justice. The headman of the village was called as the Mukadam, right? His duty was to keep order in the village, and then to keep the records of the revenue, like we have in the other divisions. We had done the Amil, right? Here we had the Patwari. He would keep the records of the revenue, right? So I'm sure that you have understood the administration under the Mughals. But my only, advice to you would be, once you've understood this, for this, just kind of jot down a piece of paper and try to make a flowchart of the administration that we have done. Now, there might be certain, kind of changes in your book as such. So that you can always comment in me. I can just clear your query if there is one. As I told you in these in terms of your Vakil and Divan. So in case you have any such queries, you can always comment me. Otherwise, just try to make a flow chart on a piece of paper. Listen to my video, try to understand all these important administrative officers. Because basically, bache, there was one who was in charge of the overall administration, the revenue, the military, the religious, and this pattern was followed in every level of the administration. Then go back to your book, read it. If you have any difficulty, feel free to comment me, and I'm there to help you. Thank you so much. And my next video, I will be talking about part 2 of the administration. Now, you've talked about such a large administrative, strategy in terms of the officers, in terms of the work that is being done. But to have this kind of administration, you need money to pay these people. So, in the next video, I will be talking about the revenue administration, about the judicial administration, and also about the military administration. See you soon and take care of yourself. Stay home, stay safe.